SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
State Treasurer David McRae is returning record amounts of money to Mississippians, whether it's through the College and Career Savings Program or the hundreds of millions in unclaimed money awaiting your claim. Treasurer David McRae says get your applications and claims in today. Treasury.ms.gov.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to MidDays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music on this
Hump Day.
Yeah, it's the day after Election Day in the great state of Mississippi. I think all the races, perhaps but one, have been called. Is what the status is at this point. Really appreciate the great coverage by the SuperTalk Mississippi news team. Excellent job there. Hope you guys were able to check that out and enjoyed that. So I guess at the top of the ticket, it's Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith, who cruised to victory in her primary race against challenger Sarah Adlaka. Didn't really have too much of a trouble there, winning that one, and she will, of course, advance to the general election. Looks like it's Scott Cologne on that side that will take on the senator in the upcoming general election. So Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith with 80.8% of the votes. Sarah Adlaka, the challenger, 19.2%. A total of 155,000 cast across the state of Mississippi in that Republican primary. On the Democratic side, 144,000 ballots cast. Scott Cologne, he wins once again rather handily with 73% of the vote, trailed by Priscilla Till with 18%, Albert Littell with 8.5%, total of 144,000 ballots cast in the Democratic primary. So that works out to be 299,000, right at 300,000 votes. That's not a lot, is it, Rhino, relative to the number of registered voters in the state? Aren't we sitting around 800,000 or so registered voters? I believe last time you and I researched that.
But on the flip side, it does seem like turnout was up from last primary.
Okay, I wasn't aware. I haven't tracked that.
I mean, if the last primary was 11%, and it's more than a quarter of 800,000.
Okay. The last
close
primary?
to a quarter.
Is that what it was? 11%? Is that what you
was
said?
reported, wasn't it?
I don't know. I don't remember that. I've been so focused on this one, so I'm honestly not sure. But yeah, you're right. You're saying that did we have a statewide race then? Or are you just talking about the congressional primary 2 years ago?
Primary.
Yeah. No statewide race, though, right, on the ballot. But folks just aren't getting out there and voting. I think that's the main message here. So registered voters, check us out on that. I think it's still around 800,000 in the state. But you're right, that would be more in this one, this particular primary, than the prior primary. So, and also note the difference between the number who voted in the Republican versus the Democrat primary. Only 10,000 votes separates the two. So 155 for Republicans and change, 144 for Democrats and change, 11,000. So that's fairly close, fairly evenly split between Republicans and Democrats who participated in yesterday's statewide Senate primary. And then as you move ahead to the various U.S. House races, I don't know that there were a ton of surprises. One still not yet called. But you've got District 1 that's currently the seats held by Representative Trent Kelly. His race was uncontested, so of course he prevailed. And then you've got on the Democrat side, Cliff Johnson and Kelvin Buck. Cliff Johnson wins that one, 63% of the vote versus 36% for Kelvin Buck. So Mr. Johnson will advance to the general election to take on sitting Congressman Trent Kelly. Also, just to dispense with this one, Michael Guest, who's on the program today at 11:05, he also, his race uncontested, and there was a Democrat also running for the seat that currently is held by Congressman Michael Guest, and his race uncontested. Michael, I want to make sure I say this right, but I'm not sure if I do. Radio? I don't know how to say it, Ryan. I've never heard him say it before. And his race uncontested. That's why you haven't heard the name, because he hasn't had an opponent. So that's interesting, isn't it? You got two uncontested races on the Democrat-Republican side in Congressional District 3. Both of those candidates, of course, advance to the general election.
Serratio.
Okay, thank you. That's how you pronounce it. Just so you guys will know, the spelling is Chiaradio. Say that again, Serratio.
Serratio.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Want to make sure we get that right. So Mr. Michael Serratio will take on Congressman Michael Guest in the general election. Once again, the congressman is on the program today. In the 4th Congressional District, Mike Ezell wins easily over challenger Sawyer Waters. Congressman Ezell, of course, the current seat holder. He captured 84% of the vote versus 15% for Sawyer Waters. And Representative Ezell moves to the general election. On the Democrat side, you also had a contested race, and it looks like it's Jeffrey. I'm not sure how to pronounce that either. I haven't heard it. Is it Hullum or Hullum? Hulum wins with 97% of the vote. That doesn't look right. Pardon me, 57% of the vote. 57, that looks right. And he will advance to take on Congressman Ezell in the general. It's the Republican primary in Congressional District 2, that the district currently represented by Congressman Benny Thompson, who's been there longer than dirt, since 1993. 33 years, seems like that's enough. But he, an example of one who is addicted to the drug of politics. But that race, razor thin. Ron Eller currently in the lead. This is what
it's Hullum.
Thank you, Hullum.
Jeffrey Hullum.
Thank you. So Ron Eller, how many times, Rhino, is this he's run for this seat? Is this his third attempt, I believe? And
second or third.
He is currently in the lead over Kevin Wilson, the supervisor from Adams County. Razor thin The current lead is 434 votes out of 24,674 cast in Congressional District 2. Just looking at the map, it is of counties very much divided, as you would expect when you look at the way the map is colored in for the specific candidates. A bit of a surprise. I think that Mr. Wilson outspent Ron Eller significantly, but yet right now is trailing. This one has not been called. I want to be clear, has not been called yet. 94% of the vote in is what the various services are showing across all the counties in the district. 94%. So that means that you're still waiting on some absentee votes. If it's 6% of those that are outstanding, that's what, roughly 1,500 votes? So if I just do some quick math there, I think Mr. Wilson would have to capture about 70% of those outstanding absentee votes, right, Rhino, to overcome his current deficit of 434 votes. It's about the way the math works out. That one is a bit of a surprise, and that's the only outstanding race we have that I can tell right now in the state of Mississippi from yesterday's primary elections. Once again, shout out to SuperTalk Mississippi News for their coverage. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
Hello, I'm Gary.
This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
We're rolling. Hit it. Go. Play it.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays. We also want to extend our gratitude, of course, to Southern Consulting Associates and Bank First, who sponsored our election coverage, which was excellent last night. Shout out to JT Mitchell, Caleb Sailors, the news team, for burning the old midnight oil, Rhino, up here in making sure that Mississippians were kept up to date and informed of the results. Really do appreciate that. They did a great job. Southern Consulting Services, leaders in government relations, public policy, and regulatory affairs in Mississippi, 20 years of experience. Sandy Ray and her team will help you navigate state government. Go to southernconsultingms.com to learn more. And if there's one thing we all need to understand, Rhino, it's how to navigate state government. Because it is seems to be unnavigable at this point. Also, coverage brought to you by Bank First, serving Mississippi communities since 1888. Bank First puts Mississippians first. From personal and business accounts to convenient mobile banking, Bank First makes managing money easier. Visit Bank First, F as in Fred, S as in Sierra.com to learn more. Appreciate their sponsoring our coverage, which again was excellent. So, total turnout across the state, a little disappointing, I would say, overall. Just seems like a lot of folks don't see the use. I disagree with them, and I wish they would take a stronger interest in elections, exercise their right to cast a ballot. But I think there are a lot of people who feel like, I can't connect the dots. No matter who I put in there and I vote for, it doesn't change my life and the trajectory of my life. I disagree with them, and I would invite folks to keep this in mind. Sometimes it's not about voting for people that can, I'm sad to say, accomplish anything as much as it is voting for people who can keep the other side from accomplishing anything. I can't help but consider where this country would be, for example, if Kamala Harris and the Democrats had prevailed in 2024. If she were the president and Democrats were in charge, all sorts of bad stuff would be happening, honestly. And we've been through the litany of what that would look like. But that's still their goal. Make no mistake. They haven't backed off on their objectives. And what's disturbing is that, are there any moderate Democrats left? It just feels like they're being pulled hard to the left. And I'll give you an example. New York City. Now, I understand that's just a city, but it's a big dang city. And to some extent, I think it is a reflection of the Democrat mantra and the Democrat agenda. They are proposing to raise the city's minimum wage to $30 an hour. Now, that's by 2030, but it's still $30 an hour. That would double the current rate. They're going to phase it in, $30 an hour, 2032 for smaller employers. Oh, thanks. That's just incredible. Less than 500 employees, the minimum wage in 2027 would shoot up to $20 an hour, 23 and 28, 26, 29. So you see they're phasing it in. And then for small employers, $19 an hour in 27. $21.50, I don't know how they came up with that, in 28, 24, 29, etc. And then wages would automatically increase, given annual cost of living metrics tied to that. This is unbelievable, in my view, that you think about this, Rhino. $30 an hour, and I get it. We're talking about 3 years from now. $30 an hour, that works out to be a little over $60,000 a year for a full-time employee. In the state of Mississippi, the median household income presently is $55,000 a year. Sadly, that's 50th. We've been 50th since the Census Bureau and the Bureau of Labor Statistics began capturing that data and publishing it. And I know people are out there saying, yeah, but you got to adjust it for the cost of living. You're right. When you do, we're still 50th. The median household income in the country is $85,000. So, of course, we still adhere to the federal minimum wage, and that's also a ruse, a farce, a fallacy the left likes to use a lot when they talk about the minimum wage, because here's the truth. Only about 1.8% of workers in the country earn the minimum wage. I don't mean the federal minimum wage. I mean the minimum wage. Not many companies pay the minimum wage. And the vast majority of those who earn it, they're 18 to 24. They're not, as the Democrats describe, oh, they're breadwinners taking care of big families. No, they're not. That's not who's earning the minimum wage. And by the way,
that hasn't even been true since mid-90s.
In fact, to your point, the year in which the highest percentage of workers earn the minimum wage in this country, 1979. We've talked about that before. 13%. Now it's 1.8%. So this idea that, oh, they've decimated the middle class. No, honestly, the middle class has shrunk because more people have moved up out of it. They don't like to share that, though. That's all well documented, folks. So I'm not making this up. Rhino, you know this. You and I have researched it before together on this. But it's a populist talking point that the Democrats love to use. And here's what I think you're going to see going into the midterms. This is what's going to be their mantra and their key message. It's all going to be about wealth redistribution through taxes. We've talked about Senator Chris Van Hollen's legislation, and there are about 3 other senators as well, and I think 1 or 2 over there on the House side, that have legislation that would rather dramatically change the tax structure in this country. I don't think at this point there's any chance of it passing, but they desperately want to impose a wealth tax, which is unconstitutional. They say it would raise a bunch of money, and of course they would use that for child care, all kinds of programs. It's always programs. Programs, because the government, that's what they're good at, is programs. Pay no attention to the fact that they're all riddled with fraud, waste, and abuse. It's unbelievable. I've seen some recent reports in California, for example. I didn't even know there were some of these programs that existed in Medicare and Medicaid, but in California there's a big scandal about hospice fraud in Medicare. It's unbelievable. Undead-gum believable. I say no more damn money until you get a grip on this. We're tired of paying taxes and, worse yet, borrowing money that flow into the pockets of scammers. And you're looking the other way, government, intentionally. And then
and fighting against anybody that pushes for reform.
100%.
If you push for any kind of reform, you're called every ist and ism in the book.
So now even CBS News has figured it out. They conducted an investigation in the Golden State of California and found that there's nearly $200 million of hospice fraud in 2023. Hospice, Medicare hospice. One building had 89 registered hospices. Now, this is CBS News. Hardly a bastion of conservatism. When you got CBS News, it's just unbelievable. And all they did was a quick analysis of records pertaining to every hospice operating in Los Angeles County. And they also reported, by the way, the fraud's growing. It ain't slowing down. Unbelievable. Also, the Starbucks founder, he says, that's Howard Schultz. He's actually a pretty reasonable guy and a dang good business person. He's not a far-left loon like many believe. He says, I'm out of Washington State. You've seen this. I'm going to Florida and taking my billions, coming back in the Element Well studio.
From the Seabrook.com.
Okay, is everybody ready? I'm ready.
Ready here.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
We're back with you in the Element Well studio. So I can't emphasize this enough, and I'm going to get on the text line here in a minute. Appreciate all the engagement today, that the Democrats are going to really dwell on and pounce on something that seems to resonate with a lot of people, in my view, sadly, and that's the billionaires and the oligarchs and the income inequality that the left has been pushing for some time. Many times on this program, you guys have heard me cite statements by old Robert Reich, who's got a media outlet called Inequality Media. And he loves to, like here recently, these number of people have got, I don't remember the numbers, have this much wealth, and that's more than all these people combined. Like, okay, but what do you want to do about that? And that's what bothers me, Rhino, is that you know this. Well, what they want to do is take your money, skim off the top, and give it to this group. Well, that doesn't solve the income inequality. I don't even think it's a problem. I'm not going to call it a problem. And when I see that, I go, okay, so? Like, and they want you to believe that, well, it's because they get all these special concessions and they have all these special favors. And, you know, they gave to Trump and they're building the ballroom and they showed up at the inauguration. Also, okay, so? And it's primarily the people, if you look at the billionaires in this country, there are about 3,000, by the way, in the world. And the number in this country has increased. It's nearly 2,000. 2,000 out of 340 million people have a net worth that places them in the category of billionaire. But if you go down the list and you look at who's among them, it's not exactly like it's these old guard oligarchs that have got all this control and sway and are getting special favors. This is what people just seem to ignore. We made them rich because what they make is so valuable to us, we're willing to give them our money. Like you, Robert Reich, you're making them rich. With every keystroke you type and every video you publish, do you know how many different companies are involved in just that simple digital exchange? That behind the scenes are all billionaires? A bunch is what is the answer to that. And now, with the prediction markets, I talked about that the other day, we're minting billionaires under 30. Because they came up with an idea that a lot of people like. It's not government. And, of course, government is seeking to step in and regulate that, which I disagree with, by the way. Do there need to be some reasonable guardrails? Maybe. I'd have to think about it. But overall, man, get out of the way. Let people make those decisions. So the Democrats are going to lean heavily into the it's really becoming almost a tax cut competition among the Democrats. It's hold my beer. This is what I'm going to do. It's unbelievable. Cory Booker, the senator from New Jersey, he's got one. Van Hollen's got one. Bernie Sanders has got one. They all got them. Liz Warren. They've all got these various plans to really take more people off the tax rolls, is what it'd do, and place more of the tax burden on people at the upper end of the scale. That's their idea. And it's not because it would necessarily raise more revenue, because it wouldn't. And it's not because, hey, if we had more revenue, we could do this, that, and the other. Because, no, that's not keeping you from doing that now. You spend it whether you got the revenue or not. If you didn't, we wouldn't have $38 trillion in debt and be producing $2 trillion annual deficits. But they're going to lean heavy into this. And I've been following that crazy James Tallarico in Texas. He's the one who won the Democrat primary recently, advances to the general. And he says that the divide in the country, it's not left and right. It's not red versus blue. It's us versus the billionaires. Huh? That's the divide in the country? It's the rest of the population versus 2,000 people. What does that mean? And once again, Mr. Tallarico, you're using what they created. And you're pretty good at using what they're created, by the way. You figured out the way to optimize leverage of those tools they created that made them rich. If you really were serious, you'd stop doing that. But alas, you're not going to do that because you might not be competitive. And what you want more than anything in the world is to be a U.S. Senator. That's just the truth. And I'm not shy about saying it, as you guys know, but you're going to see more and more of a ramp up of this class warfare rhetoric. And here's my fear, Rhino, that people on our side are going to lean into it and buy into it. I'm concerned about that. So, of course, Maggie Thatcher famously said, the problem with socialism is that eventually you run out of other people's money. I'll take that a step further that I learned from business. Don't count other people's money. Don't obsess with it. You'll drive yourself crazy and be miserable. You'll never get to where you want to be. Be grateful and continue to work towards improving your household financial condition, if that's what your goal is. Some people's goal is, I'm fine with this level. I want more time for leisure. That's fine. You have a choice. You have an option. That's great. But don't be jealous and resentful and mad at people who work 24 hours a day, who ultimately achieve that status of wealth. Or I can't explain it. Why can I not hit a golf ball like Tiger Woods? I don't know. Wasn't God's plan. Why do some people have this amazing ability to invent things that we use and we're willing to part with our money for? Man, that's part of God's plan. How could you ever explain and rationalize that? You can't. Why do some people get sick and others don't? There's just no way. Maybe you could blame it on original sin, right? we were doomed from the get-go to this reality of humanity. I don't know. I'm on a rant a bit about that because I'm warning that you're going to see Democrats lean into this. And remember, the country is not largely one ideology or party or another. It's that squishy middle where the sausage is made in terms of election outcomes. And I think last time you and I looked at it, those who say they're independent and can go either way, that now exceeds the number who consider themselves to be one part of the major parties, right? Am I right about that? I think so.
And there are varying theories on why that is. I mean, for a long time, you had a large swath of independents that called themselves independents because if you called yourself conservative, well, that means you had to be racist. The mainstream media said you were racist.
Okay. That's right. You're right about that.
And then you have the other theory that both parties have done such a poor job of doing anything for a large swath of the population that large swath of the population's fed up with both sides.
That's totally true. And so they say, and we got some text on the text line today. Here's Josh says, I can understand where people feel like their vote does not matter. I know a lot of people dislike Cindy Hyde-Smith, but feel like their vote doesn't matter because she's going to win either way. It blows my mind that Benny Thompson is still getting elected in his primary. So, but I do think there's a widespread sentiment out there where it doesn't really matter. Whoever I send, it's. But I would also, I guess, encourage you to think about this. Don't expect government, right? Don't expect so much out of your government. Go back to John F. Kennedy. It's not what government can do for you, but what you can do. That was pretty prescient, was it not? We've developed into a society where every problem we got. And I'm generalizing. I know this isn't everybody, but you know what I'm talking about. There are a lot of people who think, you need to fix this and this and this and this. Like, seriously? You'll see this on social media where our elected officials will post something, an announcement or something, and then somebody in the comment will say, well, what about this, which is totally unrelated? It's just incredible. We're coming right back in the Element Well studio. Stay with us. Congressman Michael Guest at 11:05. It's Haley Fisackerly, President and CEO of Entergy, at 12:05.
On the John Deere
It's so awesome!
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Come on! Let's get on with the show!
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Just looking at this latest list from Forbes, Rhino, of the billionaires. What's really amazing now with the generative AI on the Forbes report, World's Billionaires List, Facts and Figures. That's the headline, of course. And next to that is an AI-generated image, and it's got the people, right, whom we know, standing in the front, and they're like on a ship, a yacht. And standing in the front's Donald Trump and Elon Musk, and Elon Musk's got a little captain's hat on. And then you see in between there is right behind them, to Musk's right, Jeff Bezos of Amazon. In the middle, shown sitting between Trump and Musk, Mark Zuckerberg. And to Trump's left, it's Larry Ellison, founder of Oracle. It's just really neat to think about the power of AI and assembling all those figures in an AI-generated image, standing atop an AI-generated yacht there on the front deck. It's pretty cool. And a lot of them are positioned on the upper deck looking down. 3,428, a record on the world's billionaire list. This is 400 more than in 2025. We added more than one new billionaire every day over the last 12 months. The billionaire class is $4 trillion richer than last year. Their combined wealth, $20.1 trillion. So, to Robert Reich and Chris Van Hollen and Cory Booker and Ro Khanna and Bernie Sanders and Liz Warren, $20.1 trillion is a lot of money. But let's be honest, Rhino, we spend $7.5 a year. So 3 years, if you drain their bank accounts and all that went to fund government, which of course is impractical. I'm just going through the math here. It's 3 years. You're trying to squeeze blood out of a turnip there, Bernie. You just want to punish success because you think that resonates. You feel that resonates with your base. Yeah, Bernie got them. Van Hollen got those rich people. He shook them down, baby. Oh, let's see. I'm still not happy. Yes, exactly what would happen. Unbelievable. And I'm telling you, that Tallarico out in Texas, this is his message every dang day. He maintains that the entire state of Texas is run by a couple of billionaires. That's what he says in his speeches. It's us versus them. Unbelievable. Yet, where they generally got their money? Oil. Guess what? You want the price of gas to go down? That makes them richer, you fools. They don't get that, do they? Unbelievable. They wouldn't be happy under any circumstances, honestly. They're just permanently unhappy, aggrieved, miserable souls. Incredible. So, we are governed by a billionaire, the President of the United States. And 15 of the 20 richest people on earth reside in the United States. There should be no surprise about that. Now, I got to look it up, but generally speaking, historically, we've always had about half of the world's billionaires. So I'll look that up in a second here to see just how many are on the list that are from the United States. But typically, it works out such that the United States is home for about half of the billionaires in the world. And then they're scattered about. And what's really weird that I still can't figure out how it works, I don't think they want you to be able to figure out, it's like, how do you get to be a billionaire in China exactly? Because the CCP allows you to? Because they're getting some sort of benefit from that. The TikTok founder, as you know, is one of them. And then there's...
Basically, in China, if you have a good idea, you tell the government about that good idea, and they either give it the go-ahead or tell you to go away. And if they give it the go-ahead, they subsidize it and then take the profit.
Okay, I got you. So it's I don't know what I'd call that. I can't even call that a hybrid. But I don't think they want you to know how it works. I've never seen anybody or heard anybody explain, well, how is it that these people in China are like, not only are they just incredibly poor, in many cases they fear for their lives. And then you got these billionaires. So now there are people that say that
It's proximity to the power.
I see. Well, there are people in this country that would say that we have a similar system, but that's just horse hockey. That's just not true. China doesn't have safety nets like we do in this country, many of which are scammed to hell and back, which is what's making people mad. It's time for a break. Fox News, SuperTalk News coming up next, and then Congressman Michael Guest. Stay with us. Of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. Hello. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's hour 2 of Middays from the Element Well studio on this
Hump Day.
It's our great pleasure to welcome now Congressman Michael Guest. He represents Mississippi's 3rd District. Appreciate you coming in. Good to see you in the studio.
Great to be with you again.
Yeah. So this time we're not on video or phone. It's nice to have you in the studio. Appreciate you coming in.
Look, it's always great to come into Super Talk Studios. Y'all have got a great facility here. I think the interview is always better when you can do it in person, face to face. I know that doesn't always work for scheduling wise, but thank you for having me.
Yeah, and of course, congratulations. You had an uncontested race. I know that was a sigh of relief. I know it certainly was for your lovely wife Haley, because I know she stays stressed out, as any spouse is.
Well, that's right. And look, the old saying, only two ways to run: run scared or run unopposed. And so we were fortunate this time not to have a primary challenger. We do have a Democrat challenger in December. So as we get closer, of course, we'll be gearing up and working extremely hard. But was able to watch a little baseball last night while I followed election results. We had a couple of good baseball games. Ole Miss and Southern, good game, 2 great teams. State and Tulane also played. So I was on my couch watching baseball, following results on social media.
I think the Bulldog Nation is pretty pleased with their team.
Great start. We'll be coming into conference play, and so competition will get much tougher, much stiffer. I think State opens conference play at Arkansas, who's a top 10 team on the road. So we'll really get a chance to see just how good a program Mississippi State and Ole Miss both have. Because, again, Ole Miss will run that same conference gauntlet that Mississippi State does, and we know that the conference is not only good in football and basketball, but also extremely good in baseball.
No doubt about it. All right, so give us an update. What's happening in Washington? Of course, the war is top of mind of everybody, and the president seems to be, as well as his Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, they're delivering, I would say, an optimistic tone at this point.
Look, we're 2 weeks now into Operation Epic Fury. I think it has been to this point very successful strategically. We have been blessed in that the number of casualties on the American side extremely low. I think 7 casualties throughout this conflict. We've continued to see the United States and Israel be able to degrade the military capabilities of Iran. We see the number of ballistic missile strikes, the numbers of drones has dropped as the war has gone on. And look, we've intentionally targeted their missile launchers to try to minimize that threat. So I think if you look at it in that scope, I think you would say that the first several weeks have been extremely successful. We know that there's going to be an economic impact. We see that with the cost of fuel, particularly gas, having spiked. That because the Iranians have shut down the flow of much of the oil out of the Middle East because they have stopped tanker travel through the Strait of Hormuz. And so that is going to be impacting our economy. And the longer this conflict goes on, the more we will feel that because as fuel goes up, that affects the cost of all the goods that we purchase because those goods generally have to be shipped to us either by Amazon or they have to be shipped on trucks to grocery stores and Walmarts and places where we purchase those goods. And so that will have an impact, particularly as we have seen inflation drop. Inflation had dropped to 2.4%. That inflation
just out this morning
is very likely to creep up once those fuel costs are factored in for things going forward. And so what happens in the Middle East does impact each and every one of us. It impacts us economically. But look, we have said, being our nation, going back for several presidents, that that the policy of the United States is that Iran cannot be allowed to possess a nuclear weapon. That was the policy under Trump, both first and second term, the policy under Joe Biden, and the policy under Barack Obama. And look, we remember the diplomatic deals that Barack Obama cut with the Shah, where he shipped plane loads of cash over to Iran to try to bribe them, if you will, buy them off from building a nuclear weapon. That was unsuccessful. We remember the failed nuclear deal that he entered. Trump withdrew from that deal. Biden reinstituted that. So we've tried diplomacy. We've tried sanctions. We've tried everything except military action. And so I think the president felt like that we had reached a point where they had reactivated their nuclear program after the bombing raids last year. That the president felt like we needed to take bold action, and that's why the attacks commenced just 2 weeks plus ago.
Yeah. Well, he the president, I guess, delivering remarks as well as the Secretary of War that the effort is progressing in favor of this country and that we're going to end it, the president said yesterday, very soon. And I think you're probably aware that Americans, if we don't see a pretty soon result and conclusion, that they get nervous and they start pushing back.
That's right. I mean, I think we all remember what happened in Iraq and how that conflict, a very different conflict, but how it dragged on, not just for months, but it dragged on for years.
Yeah.
And so no one wants to see that. And look, I don't have privy to the intelligence that the president does, and so I don't know the will, the resolve of the government officials in Iran to continue this fight. And look, I tell people all the time, look, our fight is not necessarily with the people of Iran. It's with the government leaders, those that control, and is a very tightly controlled government. Unlike here, where yesterday we had the opportunity to go to the polls and select our leaders, that's not how the leaders in Iran are chosen. And so, what we want to see is regime change. We want to see the people of Iran be able to select their leaders, and we're hopeful and optimistic that those leaders will be friendly to the West and will stop much of the chaos that Iran has spread. They are the primary sponsor of state terrorism across the globe. We talk about the Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas, all of these terrorist organizations that they fund. We know that the government of Iran, the leaders, hate America. If you don't know that, you're not listening to the rhetoric that comes out of that government. They are constantly chanting death to the United States. They refer to America as the Great Satan. And so for anybody to believe that Iran is anything other than an adversary to the U.S. and to Israel, they are not tracking politics and they're not following what has come out of Iran really since 1979.
Yeah, it's been going on 40 years, and it's a problem that I think needs to be dealt with. It just feels like if we can get through this and reach a conclusion and an agreement and just clean up the region and rid it of this menace, that gosh, the globe would be better off. Not just the United States, but the whole world.
You're right. Particularly that region. I mean, you could see peace really prosper there in the Middle East. You could see the expansion of the Abraham Accords, where we're seeing free trade between Israel and the nations that surround them. We know that there is a great deal of interaction between Iran and Russia and China, two nations that are not necessarily nations that I would consider to be friendly to the United States. And so if we could break, that axis of evil, I think that was the term President Bush used. At that time, he was referring to North Korea, Iran, and Iraq. We've taken Iraq off the board. If we could have free Iran, and then we would only be left with North Korea, I think not only would America be better, but I think the world would be a better place.
Yeah, and then the Reagan days, it was the evil empire. That's how he referred to the USSR, which had, of course, serious nuclear ambitions and ambitions to many respects, go to war with this country.
That's right.
And take it over. I mean, that was a real threat that he diffused, and he diffused it economically. He broke them, is what he did, and made them spend all their money, which wasn't a whole lot. Their GDP wasn't that great, because under their communist socialist system, they weren't producing a whole lot. But he was sucking all that up to fund their military. And when Reagan came in and bolstered our military, they tried to respond, and ultimately, the whole story. The wall came down, the Iron Curtain came down, and the world's a better place for it. We got Congressman Michael Guest in the Element Well studio, coming right back.
We can climb so high, I never wanna die. Born to be wild. Born to be wild.
Interrupt this program.
Gerard Gibert.
Here we go.
This is huge.
Huge news.
Huge news. Huge.
You need to listen to this.
Middays with Gerard. SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It is Middays from the Element Well studio. We're pleased to welcome, or continue, I should say, our discussion with Congressman Michael Guest. He represents Mississippi's 3rd District. He cruised to victory in the primary last night because he didn't have an opponent. And that's the way you like it. Now on to the general is where we stand. But before I ask you about some stuff that you and I talked about over the weekend concerning a vote there in the House a week or so ago, what's your outlook for the midterms? You got to be nervous. I'm nervous, but it's natural to be nervous, and we should be nervous because it's going to make you work a little harder.
Yeah, and as far as the national outlook and what I see with Congress, people often ask me, are Republicans going to be able to hold the House? I tell them I think right now that it's too early to make that call.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a long time between now and November.
Sure.
Factors that we'll be tracking, how long does the conflict in the Middle East last? Is it over very quickly? Does it drag on for some period of time? The economy, I think, is going to be the driving issue that everyone is going to be focused on. Look, prior to the conflict in the Middle East, there were a lot of great economic data points that you and I have talked about, from GDP that we saw, from the fact that the Dow Jones was at 50,000, that inflation had dropped from as high as 9% under Biden-Harris to 2.5%. The announced economic development that the president had talked about, over $10 trillion with the trade deficit being down, the fact that we have more Americans working now than ever before. At that time, gas prices were at a 5-year low. I mean, so there were some great economic data
Real
points.
wages was another big one.
Yeah. And so what's that impact going to be based on what we see in the Middle East? And then do people feel like that they're better off economically now than they were under Joe Biden? And so those are going to be crucial issues. And look, we still don't know what the maps are going to look like, particularly in the state of Virginia. Virginia has a 6-5 congressional split right now, 6 Democrats, 5 Republicans. They are seeking to change that to a 10-1 split. And so that could be 4 additional seats that Republicans could have difficulty being competitive in if we see those maps change between now and November. So a lot of still uncertainty. We do know that traditionally the party in power faces headwinds in midterm elections, and so we've got to be very aggressive as we seek to talk about the accomplishments that we've seen with a Republican majority and under the leadership of President Donald Trump.
Retirements. Any surprises there? Steve Daines kind of surprised me.
Yeah, kind of looking at some of them. I really track in the House more. Jody Arrington was one that I was surprised. He was chairman of Budget, kind of seen as in my opinion, an up-and-coming leader. He's been there for a while, but he's still extremely young. It's going to be sad to see Jody leaving. Again, he has a position there within the conference where he's very well respected and actually chairs a committee. So he would be one on our side that was kind of surprised about. But we are starting to see, particularly on the Democrat side, some of the older members, Steny Hoyer, Nancy Pelosi, who are finally, after decades in Congress. I saw Clyburn is going to be making an announcement tomorrow whether he's going to be seeking re-election. So some of that old guard, if you will, in the Democrat Party, I think some of those individuals have decided that this is their last hurrah and they're going to be riding off into the sunset.
Okay. All right, so talk to us about this ethics vote that was Representative Nancy Mace's legislation. Explain exactly first the legislation, Congress, because I think there's a lot of buzz and talk about that, and I want to hear it from you to tell us exactly what was in there, what went down, why you cast your vote the way you did. Let us know about that.
Yeah, so Nancy Mace from South Carolina introduced legislation. That legislation would have required the Ethics Committee, a committee that I serve on, that we release files to the public about individuals where there were prior ethics investigations, where there were claims of sexual harassment. The legislation was very broad, required a lot of information to be released. Once she originally introduced the legislation, my office, along with members of the Ethics Committee, sat down, had a meeting with her staff. She was not in the meeting, a meeting with her staff. We told them that, look, we agreed with the intent of the legislation, but the manner in which it was drafted we felt was overly broad, and that we would like for Nancy to consider putting some additional protections in that legislation so that we could be supportive of it. One of those things would have given us the ability to better protect the identity of victims in this case, the young ladies who have been sexually harassed. The other would have been for Nancy to create an exclusion that documents would not have to be released until an investigation was complete. The way the way it was worded, there would have to be a running release of documents every time something new came into our possession. We would be required to release those immediately. We also asked for us not to have to release work product, and for us not to have to release statements of victims who came to us, or statements of cooperating witnesses who came to us in confidence. Many times people will come to us and they'll talk to the ethics committee because they know that is being done in confidence. If those statements were going to be released to the public, we believe that we would lose the ability to have some of those confidential conversations and gather information.
Okay.
So we asked that those changes be included. At the end of the day, she chose not to include those. She introduced her resolution as a privilege resolution, which means it's not amendable. We couldn't go to the floor and amend it. And so what ultimately happened, because, again, many of us supported the intent of the legislation, a motion was made to refer it back to the Ethics Committee. What the Ethics Committee will do is we will meet and we will try to see what we can do to offer some sort of changes to the resolution that accomplishes what she wants, which is, again, transparency and information being released, but at the same time that provides those crucial protections, again, protecting the identity of victims. And look,
Okay.
it's not just the fact that you blot out the victim's name.
Yeah.
I mean, these offices are small, so it's not like that you can just say, I'm going to take the victim's name, I'm going to blot that out, I'm going to black that out and not release it. You know, it would have required us to go much further, again, to try to protect those identities. And so that's where we are as a committee, and that's what we're going to be doing. The other information that was requested when we met with Nancy Mace is a list of all of the payouts that had been made for individuals who had been sued by employees for sexual harassment. We let Ms. Mace know that our office, the Office of Congressional Ethics, that we don't have that information, that would fall in a different department, workplace rights, and so there is a separate legal division there within Congress that deals with those, and that if she wanted payouts, if she wanted to know what cases were paid out and what amounts, that the Ethics Committee didn't have that information. So I think hopefully we kind of educated her and her team a little bit because she believed that all that information was kept there, deposited there with the Ethics Committee, and clearly not the case. And so, look, I'm about transparency. I'm about holding people accountable. I'm about making sure that the American people know those individuals who have been that have been alleged to have committed ethics violations. We're going to investigate those, and we're going to quickly get that information back out once we do a thorough investigation. But again, as written, the resolution I think was insufficient for some of the things that we needed done.
I know you've heard this. I think that the popular perception out there is that the Congress is covering this up and doesn't want to expose this misconduct by members, and that they're just putting up roadblocks to doing that. To respond to that,
I'll tell you that I don't believe that that's the case. I've also heard that we, being Congress, that we're continuing to use federal funds to pay out these claims of sexual harassment. And what most people don't know is before I was elected to Congress in 2018, Congress actually passed legislation that prohibited that. Okay. So there are no payouts where the taxpayers are paying for settlements in sexual harassment claims. The member is directly responsible for that. Okay. And it's been that way for 8 years. It's been that way since I've been in Congress.
Okay. So, and then I think the main takeaway is this isn't over. You guys are still trying to get to the bottom of this, and in the interest of transparency, and let the public know.
Yeah, and I believe we'll be able to codify some language that again accomplishes the intent of Nancy Mace, but again provides those guardrails and protections that are necessary.
Well, we need to get you back on, as we always enjoy having you, but when there's some progress made, so you can report that back to us, because I think folks want to know. They're interested in this. You know that. You've heard that from folks.
Be happy to report back and let you know what progress we're making.
Congressman Michael Guest has been our guest in the Element Well studio. Always good to see you. Thanks for coming in, man.
Thanks, Gerard.
Appreciate
You too.
it. Coming right back in the Element Well studio.
From the Seabrook.com.
Gerard Gibert. He keeps his classified documents right where they belong. Inside a Journey record jacket from the 1980s. Gerard Gibert. SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. So, appreciate Congressman Michael Guest for coming in and clarifying that, because you saw the reaction, Mike, Rhino, that there was this perception out there that they were voting against this because they wanted to continue the cover-up. And I'll be honest, folks, I ran into the congressman over the weekend, and I point-blank asked him about it. But not in a negative and sort of hostile way. It was more just curious, like, hey, a lot of people are talking about this. Can you explain it? And honestly, he gave me even a more detailed explanation than he did, and I'm glad, because I had a hard time following it when you get into some of the legal aspects of this. And then explaining that, hey, this is a privileged resolution, so you can't change it. That was the other thing that I didn't realize, but that's part of the rules that I think it's fair to say the average person out there doesn't know. And so when he explained the rationale for the vote, I said, please come on the show and explain this. And he said, let me think about it. And about 2 minutes later said, yeah, I can do that. Let me talk to my staff, which is the right thing to say, and just get their input on it. And then, guys, he texted me Sunday, said, okay, I want to come on and talk about it. And that's how we were able to get him scheduled. So grateful he was in town. He could come in the studio rather than calling in. We could have a face-to-face conversation, as he indicated. As Rhino knows, always makes for a better interview. But so it sounds like there's just work to do. There's no effort on the part of he and the others who voted against this legislation to cover up what's going on. I want to know as well. I think any caring Americans do. This is something that cannot be tolerated whatsoever. And we have a right to know what the heck happened. And if some folks engaged in wrongdoing that rises to the level of breaking the law, well, then they need to suffer the consequences for it. And I don't think the congressman would have a problem calling for that either, in my view. And just looking at the statement from the Committee on Ethics, he said all members of the committee treat their roles with solemn responsibility and seriousness, regardless of party affiliation. There is a shared view that sexual harassment and workplace misconduct, in particular, have no place in the halls of Congress. They honestly don't have any place in any work environment. That's that's not something that's way out there whatsoever. And they go on to say, here and elsewhere, perpetrators of sexual misconduct should never be shielded from responsibility for their misdeeds. 100% agree with that. So we're going to stay on this, and I'm confident the congressman is going to keep pushing to get to the bottom of this and report to the American people what happened, who's involved, any sort of citations or again, censorship, any of that needs to occur. Okay, let's do it. And again, if there's any breaking of the law, charges need to be levied. It is despicable that before 2018, I can't even comprehend how this got started, that there were funds coming from taxpayers paying for these defenses and so forth. That just is insane to me. And I guess we voters, we need to do a better job of voting for people of character and integrity. That's pretty essential when you're representing a large group, as you are when you serve in government as an elected leader. In the U.S. House, some 720,000 people in your district. Of course, in the Senate, on the Senate side, the entire state's population. So let's get to the bottom of that. Ricky in Aberdeen talking about the light turnout for voters across the state, just looking at Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith's race, the Senate race there, as a benchmark. as a guide. Turnout was somewhat light in the primary. Ricky says, those that won't go vote, don't waste a minute griping about what's going on, though. Yeah, I've seen the same, and I was making the point earlier. That's when Ricky sent us that message that I think a lot of people feel frustrated and feel like their vote doesn't count, and that even when they do, they don't see material change. And I also would just caution that it's really not government's responsibility to deliver some sort of utopia in your life. It's government's responsibility to ensure that, in accordance with our founding documents, you're able to pursue happiness. That means get the hell out of the way, government. That's what that means. It's government's responsibility to ensure that those rights which we believe in this country were bestowed upon us by our Creator, not government, are protected. There is a clear distinction. Government does not confer rights. It protects them. Now, sometimes those manifest, of course, into the issuance, such as the right to vote, what we're talking about yesterday. But I would argue that that's consistent with the rights bestowed upon us by our Creator, among those being life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? That's just an extension of that. So it's not like you created a new right. You just kind of codified, perhaps under that category of liberty. Simple as that. That's what you're entitled to. No more, no less. And anytime I see folks talk about, well, a person deserves this or they deserve that, and I get it. I'm splitting hairs maybe a little bit. You know what you deserve is whatever the market is willing to give you, not what government. Now, does government react to market dynamics and conditions? Of course. But when we get to a mindset of, oh, I just deserve it. Well, heck, everybody, for the most part, thinks they're deserving of something or the other. But you're deserving of whatever the market says you're worth. That's the only fair arbiter of your value or your fellow human beings. Simple as that. That's why I think it's silly talking about earlier about the government and these wacko leftists and Democrats in our government wanting to go shake down the billionaires. Like, what did they do wrong? Created enormous value for society that dramatically improved our quality of life. That's what they did. And they were rewarded for it. I know you hate that, Cory Booker, Bernie Sanders, and the like, because you could never replicate what they did. And I can't explain why God gave them special talent. And I'm grateful that they leveraged it. I believe that's what God expects. I gave you special talent. Go create value for your fellow humans. What the heck's wrong with that? And you get rewarded for it. And anytime you think about government stepping in and limiting that, I promise it won't stop there. It won't stop there. You limit one, you limit all. That's not what our founding documents say. Life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. Boom, period, end of story. I get worried that people are starting to buy into that. Even people on our side of the aisle are starting to buy into that stuff. Oh, they got more money than me. That's not fair. Well, define fair. I mean, who's the arbiter of fair? That's extremely subjective.
Yeah, anybody over the age of about 12 should have an understanding that life is not inherently fair.
Pretty much started when Adam was kicked out of the garden, right? I think that kind of kicked that off. Oh, man. Well,
I mean, it makes sense for kids to not have a full grasp on the unfairness of reality.
Sure.
But grown adults still living in the infantilized la-la land of leftism, they have no excuse.
Yeah, I completely agree. By the way, Joey the trucker said, Gerard, everybody I talked to didn't even know yesterday was election day. I don't know why they don't keep up with our state, and everyone that I told, I said, go vote. I guarantee you didn't go. I'm not sure what that means exactly, but I hear you, Joey. And I share your concerns as well. That's why we promoted it as much as we could here on this show. That to
I think
those
he's saying the folks that he told to go vote, he guarantees that they all didn't go vote.
I got you. You're right. Coming right back.
Polyupa, Mississippi, a division covering the stories that matter most to Mississippians. Gerard Gibert, Middays with Gerard, SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It is Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. Once again, Haley Fisackerly, President and CEO of Entergy, joins us in the next segment after the news at the top of the hour. On the C Spire text line, you did a great job quizzing. Appreciate that. The Congressman's always an easy interview. He has command of the subject matter and is able to explain it. I hope you guys thought that as well. I certainly feel better about it. I admit I was upset as well, but, you know, anytime you see that, and you know the people involved, Rhino, you know this, you've always got to think, there's another side of this story here. It's not as appears, but people jumped off the cliff on that. Oh, my gosh, they're just part of the swamp. They're covering this up and all that kind of stuff. And so I confronted him about it in person. I knew I was going to see him Saturday. And he went through the explanation just like he did here, although he provided me more detail. And I'll admit, I got lost in the rules a little bit there. I wasn't aware of some of that stuff. I did know about the privilege resolution, but some of the things he was saying that she, being Nancy Mace, wanted in there, and he explained that just as he did, that made sense. And so all they did was say, hey, look, Representative Mace, go back and make these adjustments and bring it back. That's what the committee said, and we're good to go. So we'll see what happens. So, yeah, I was talking about this notion of what you deserve, and somebody said, I deserve no more than I'm willing to give. Yeah, and that goes back, that's on the C Spire text line. That's consistent with what I've been saying here, and you and others, not taking credit for that, but it's all about the value. There's a lot of people that believe that you're entitled to something because of your effort and your hard work. I disagree. You're rewarded based on the value. And that's consistent with what our person here is saying, what I'm willing to give. Give means the value you create for society. It could be you're working for a company, your value to that company. That is used to determine your compensation, your environment. Simple as that. The market will speak. It is the best regulator of all. It's in thinking about the education freedom issue. That's the anti-school choice people. Oh, my gosh, those private schools don't have any oversight and accountability and standards and all that stuff. Yeah, they do. The people who pay the bills, people who are entrusting that school to their child, or their child to that school, pardon me. Those people, they're a better regulator than government. Always. And I don't accept that explanation and that objection, I guess I should say. And as we've discussed, okay, great. We have all this oversight, all these standards, all these dashboards and accountability. What is it buying us exactly in the public schools? We still have failing public schools. We still have students graduating that cannot read and cannot do math, despite the gains we've made at the lower levels in school. That's still a major problem. When you get out of the high school ranks, you're not really at the high school level. You know that's still a problem, not just here, across the country. Employers are talking about it. Colleges are saying, well, they're coming to college here. We got to teach them how to do 8th grade math before we can unload them into the classroom. Incredible.
Thanks, W.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. Is it a measure of concern that in the Senate primaries the Republicans only had 10,000 more votes cast than the Democrats? Great question, Mike, on the C Spire text line. Just discussed that at breakfast this morning. It absolutely is, in my view. When you look at the statewide turnout, only 11,000 votes separated the number of voters who cast ballots in the Republican primary versus the Democrat primary. That is absolutely something that we should, on the Republican side, be concerned about as we look forward to the general election. Absolutely. 100%. And I can't explain that, the reason for such a small delta, other than maybe the apparatus involving the Democrats, even though it wasn't an incumbent on the ballot, was just a little better oiled and geared up to get the vote out. It's hard to tell, really is, what's going on there, but still came in at, what, Rhino, 20% or so? Is that, did you look at that? Is about 800,000 or so registered to vote in the state? Not sure if you were able to look that up, but
I mean, the total registered depends on where you're asking, but in Magnolia State, it says the total registered is 18 or 1.8 million, and I just don't think that's
really
right.
Oh, you know what? I think you're right, because the 800,000 number that's in my head is the number that voted in the gubernatorial election, because that's the number used to determine the number of signatures required to get a ballot measure initiated by the people on the ballot. That's where I got that number from. It's 800,000 voted, but right, 1.8 million registered, and it looks like we're going to come in with about 300,030 or so, right, yesterday. Not very good. Yeah. All right, it's time for Fox News SuperTalk News. Haley Fisackerly with Entergy is next.
Your home. And now, another hour of the talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Begin your transition now.
Now on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's hour 3, the afternoon portion of Middays, live from the Element Wealth studio on this
Hump Day.
It's our great pleasure to welcome now Haley Fisackerly. He's president and CEO of Entergy Mississippi. Haley, good to see you, sir. Thanks for coming in.
Well, thank you, and good to see you, too. Appreciate the opportunity to visit with you and your audience today.
Absolutely. So you guys recently released a press release, a news release, concerning the Fair Share Plus pledge, the massive investments Entergy is making in accommodating the increased demand for energy, primarily coming from the numerous data centers that are under construction in your footprint, our footprint.
That's right.
Including, of course, right here in Mississippi. And, of course, Entergy also operates in Louisiana. There's projects going on over there as well. So explain what this is all about, Haley.
Yes, Gerard. There is tremendous electrical demand growing, as you know. You just mentioned data centers, a big proponent of that, but we're also seeing a lot of increase in manufacturing, electrification, onshoring happening in the Entergy footprint, which is Mississippi, Arkansas, Louisiana, and Southeast Texas. But last week, our chairman of the company had released that here we are 2 years later since the first data center was announced here in Mississippi, and then later in Louisiana with Meta and Google in Arkansas. We are seeing over $5 billion worth of savings between our 2.3 million customers in those 3 states. Of that $5 billion, though, over $2 billion is coming here in Mississippi. And that's due to the commitment by both AWS, the requirements under the legislation passed here that requires these data centers to pay their costs, right? But not only do they do that, as you're aware, in that legislation, the legislature and the governor went further. Well, we want you to pay your costs, but you need to provide benefits for our customers. And what we're seeing, as of today, 2 years later, we're seeing over $2 billion worth of benefits to our customers here in Mississippi.
Okay. So help us as consumers understand how we will experience and recognize and benefit from those savings.
Yeah, so The big problem we were facing in Entergy, Mississippi's territory was here we were in a situation where we had low growth, but we have a high cost of a growing business. The components, materials we need are growing. The ways we use electricity is growing. The demand is, and we need to reinvest. And when you don't have growth and you have 25% of your customers below the national poverty level, affordability becomes a big concern.
Yeah.
So just like any business or community, you need growth, right? You need economies of scales. And so by bringing in a large customer like AWS, they are bringing volume that we need, but they also bring in additional revenues in that are going to allow us to invest more to improve reliability. Our Superpower Mississippi campaign we announced, where we're going to increase spending significantly in that area to improve reliability. We're dealing with greater storm risk. We're dealing with aging infrastructure. But also that volume is they're paying the incremental cost of new generation, paying more toward the maintenance of the system. That's going to create relief for our customers. And because of that, we saw the rate trajectory pre-AWS versus post-AWS announcement significantly drop.
Okay.
So that we're projecting in 5 years rates will be 16% below what they otherwise would have been. So we're still seeing cost increases, but they really have changed the trajectory that are going to benefit our customers.
You've explained that before on the show. I've parroted you, so you'll know, because it made sense. And before, honestly, you brought it all together when you spoke at our Rotary, and you had a graph.
Right.
And it showed the line of projected energy rates going out into the future with these investments from these third parties, Amazon, and without.
Right.
And without, the trajectory without showed higher cost out in the future. And you explained, hey, look, energy, like everything else, is subject to inflation. Costs go up. Even today, we got the CPI report. It didn't go down. It's level, moderate,
right,
but we still are seeing and witnessing price increases. And honestly, the opposite kind of means our economy is in bad shape when we see that. But I got to tell you, Haley, that chart resonated with me more than anything, because it laid out, okay, well, this is where we would be going without these investments. This is where we're going with them.
Yeah.
And I have shared that numerous times.
Well, in that chart you're referring to, what's amazing about that, and every morning, I can't stress enough the lifeline that this project threw us. We know we got to invest more. We know customers demand stronger reliability. We have to build for resiliency for more storms. But that trajectory you were talking about only involved building 1.5 of the power plants that we projected.
Okay.
And it did not reflect the additional $300 million we're putting into reliability projects.
Okay.
So we've added now 3 power plants, and we've added another $300 million in reliability spending, and that trajectory still goes down.
Okay.
That is what that volume means. So any businessman listening to or business person listening on this call knows if they get more volume of their sales or more customers, or cities get more residents, they have a base to spread costs across. It's common sense.
It's Econ 101, economies of scale.
Right.
It makes perfect sense. But here's where problems are created, and you're aware of this. We're seeing across other areas of the country where data centers have been built. Virginia comes to mind, and that sort of mid-Atlantic region of the country, to some extent Georgia, where they have seen spikes in the cost of electricity. But it looks to me like that they lack proper planning on the part of the utility companies. And I also know that I can't remember the name of the big utility, the electric service provider up there that has several states.
Dominion. Yeah.
That's right, Dominion.
Yep.
And I've read analysis from their team, which is we're dealing with all these myriad of regulations in all these states, and we're trying to fit into all of those, and that causes our expenses to go up to provide electricity.
Well, they also operate in a market called the PJM. That's the RTO in that area. And so, first of all, Gerard, they were the first movers.
Right.
So when this opportunity came to Mississippi, we learned from them. These data centers are also being built different. As you know, here they bought large parcels of property in rural areas where they can grow. There they were building these incrementally. So But to the point that we're making here, not only did this growth create these opportunities, what Mississippi leaders did, the governor, the Public Service Commission, and legislature, they made sure that there were protections in that legislation. Some of the states in those areas, Gerard, have deregulated. And so what happens when you deregulate, you then move oversight by a regulatory body away from them. And so no one is looking after resource adequacy. You're doing that in states where you still have vertically integrated utilities who are regulated. We have to have resource plans. Our commission requires us to file these resource plans very regularly so they can see what the age of assets are, what our options are, where do we grow. We operate within the Mid-Continent Independent System Operator, an RTO, that provides transparency around planning, where we have to every year file with them what our needs are, what our filings are. We operate in a day-ahead market. So a lot more scrutiny and oversight. A lot of people think the legislation here did away with the oversight. No, it doesn't. It expedited the front end process to move forward in building these plants, but the commission still oversees each asset that we build, does prudency reviews, and still does its oversight of resource adequacy to make sure we're not put in situations like you've seen in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic areas.
And that's exactly right. That's been the objection expressed. I've heard it. You've heard it. I think we all have. But is that there was this kind of behind closed door, under the shroud of secrecy, contract negotiated between Entergy and Amazon, for example, here in Madison, Mississippi, the county, and that those rates were far below what it was going to cost to provide them power, and as a result, you guys are going to jack up rates on the average consumer out there to make up. Just explain that.
Well, far from the truth. What happened here, not only under our fair share, there were certain guiding principles. One, all the incremental costs. So every one of those data centers require substations to be built. Those are paid 100% by the data center, AWS in this case.
Okay.
The line upgrades that feed power into this region, those line upgrades had to be paid 100% by that. Now, our customers are going to benefit that because we improved the import capacity into this area on the transmission lines, but they had to pay the incremental costs. And then the power plants that had to be built. The big value there, we were not supposed to build those plants till 2030. When AWS came along and this need was there,
makes sense.
We pulled those forward. Those plants today we're building, if we had waited, if AWS didn't come and it went to Indiana or somewhere else who we were competing, I would be sitting in a situation of building those plants not till 2030, and they cost $1 billion more a piece.
Without a customer.
With
except
the
us customers.
That's right. And that's why I wake up every morning saying thank you.
Okay.
Because then all of our existing customers were going to be paying for those enormous costs.
If you hang around, we keep talking.
Yeah.
We got Haley Fisackerly, President and CEO of Entergy Mississippi. We're coming right back.
Interrupt this program.
Gerard Gibert.
Here we go. This is huge. Huge news. Huge news. Huge.
You need to listen to this.
Middays with Gerard. SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Well studio. We're visiting with Haley Fisackerly, President and CEO of Entergy Mississippi. So, Haley, once again, just what we're witnessing increases of electricity rates in Georgia, in Virginia, I want to say maybe in Arizona. What did we do different? You explained that a little bit, but I think everybody keeps pointing to that as this is what's going to happen in Mississippi, but that doesn't seem to be the case.
Well, first of all, it may be a situation of a perfect storm, but costs were already increasing. A year or so ago, we were seeing transformers that we have to buy costing 75% is more. Poles cost more. So all these costs were going up. Now, doesn't seem high to me because I've been in this job 18 years. When I first walked in this job, we were buying natural gas for $10 and $12 an MMBTU. Today, it's at $4 or greater in the 12-month strip. 18 months, 2 years ago, we were buying it for $2.93. So that has increased, and that's a dollar for dollar increase there. But that is not. These data centers are ramping now. They're not fully owned. You could argue that's probably the last decade there's been more focus on building solar and wind than it has been an all-above strategy.
Yeah.
And now we're trying to catch up. We're also seeing at Entergy Corporation as a whole, about 60% of our growth is data centers. But in Louisiana and Texas and in Arkansas, we're seeing steel mills, we're seeing LNG facilities, petrochemicals that are driving huge growth as well. So we as a country have got to get back onto an all-of-above strategy. I mean, we need wind, we need solar, we need nuclear, we need natural gas, we need it all. But right now, our only choices are natural gas and solar or wind where it can work or make sense. But those have low capacity factors, so you got to back them up. So that's a component too. But so we were already facing high costs. As I started this show, I knew I had to improve reliability. We got to replace an aging infrastructure. And so those were adding to the costs. Now I have somebody who's going to help pay for it and benefit our customers.
Yeah, and that's the good thing there. So I don't see a downside. I mean, do you look at a downside here? Is there one?
The downside would have been if we didn't get them.
Okay.
I would be in a very difficult situation knowing that in 2030 I was going to have to start building power plants that were going to cost $1 billion each more, and with the same customer base.
Okay.
And so now what I'm happy for is that we actually see a trajectory that's changed. We're going to be very competitive in our region and in the country. That's going to help us continue to grow. But guess what? We're bringing jobs to Mississippi. We're not talking about the other expansions of companies like ABB, Modine, steel pipe fabricators in South Mississippi, Howard Industries, all these growth that's happening here. Siemens Energy's recent announcement, hundreds of thousands of jobs that are coming in, hundreds and hundreds of jobs that are creating investments too.
Well, I always felt like that anytime you have a big investment, a big project like this, the folks tend to dwell on the number of jobs that are directly related to the investment, to the project, to the facility. But you got to think about all the outgrowth that it produces, which is substantial. And I know you're aware of this. I've said this on the show before. There are a number of great Mississippi-based businesses that are literally producing more net income than they ever have in their history.
That's right.
Is that true?
That's true. And I tell you, AWS has been a model. They've been great about employing local businesses.
Absolutely.
I think I saw Makita, you're on their board.
Yeah.
They put out a list. I think it was over 55
it's
local
unbelievable.
Businesses. So everything from construction to catering. It's all happening there. So the opportunities that it's bringing to this region and to this state is just something like we've never seen before.
They're a great community partner, no doubt about it. And when I talk about Mississippi businesses, I'm talking about from the dirt aspect of it all the way through the catering for the events they're having and everything in between.
That's right.
It's massive.
Right. And also the ad valorem taxes that are going to be coming to these counties at a time, local governments were dealing with aging infrastructure. They're dealing with regulations around water facilities and road expansions and school needs. Think about the generations we're changing. The young people are going to get better schools out of this, better educations. And guess what? We brought a new sector to this state, new job opportunities. So we have changed the trajectory. We as a state, the Madison County Economic Development Board, the governor, the legislature, everybody came together. And if you plan right, put the right plan forward, you can do it in a way that benefits people. And that's what's happening here in Mississippi.
And to your point there, it should be noticed and recognized that Entergy was brought into this project from the outset. That was critical. First, you had to convince Amazon that you could meet their needs, right? That was critical. And then second, it had to be viable for all parties. And so this was not done in a vacuum whatsoever.
No.
It was everybody involved at the table.
Well, the conversations we started with them 8 years ago, Gerard, we were trying to find something to help us grow so we could change that trajectory. And we were just learning from them about data centers. They didn't have a project. As we went through this, we learned what we need to do to get policies here. But what we have to make sure is if you don't have a site, if you don't have a local entity stepping up, so we point to what Madison County did here as a model to what other counties. You got to get a site, you got to get control of it, you got to get infrastructure in there to attract it. We had to get the Public Service Commission, the legislature to pass various policy changes around economic incentives. All these things have to come together to make opportunities like this to happen. And you're right. This was a team effort.
100%.
That's right.
And, got to take a little credit from the Madison County Economic Development Authority of having the forethought to purchase that land.
Right.
And then invest in it and prepare it. But our governor's well. He understands the value of site developments.
You saw where the president in his State of the Union, and on March 4th, he called in all these tech CEOs and they signed this ratepayer pledge.
The pledge, yeah.
Right? Well, we showed Secretary Wright, look what Governor Reeves and the legislature did in Mississippi, and they have praised what Mississippi has done.
Okay.
They have pointed to the chairman of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, LaSurk, has said, look at this. This is the model legislation.
That's awesome.
And and I'll never forget when AWS said they want to come here, we had to sit down with the governor. He said right off the bat, let's do it, but you got to protect customers.
Sure.
And that's where it was set. The Public Service Commission, their staff was in agreement, and that's what modeled that legislation. And more importantly, we had a customer says we don't want to harm customers. We want to move fast, but we want to do it in a way that is beneficial, not harmful.
Yeah, and I think that is good that you point that out, because in all my experience of dealing with the AWS people, and I think it's similar to yours, is that they absolutely want to be a good community citizen here. They get the value of that.
They are here for the long haul.
No doubt.
The long haul, and that's what's exciting.
And they don't want to get sideways with the people of Mississippi and that, hey, you go pay for our power for us. That's not what
that's right.
Do
they
whatsoever.
They have changed the way economic development projects work.
100%. And I think we always felt like, gosh, if we can just land this big one, it will become a springboard and a magnet for future similar type scope projects, and that's exactly what's happened in other parts of the state.
We were told that, be careful, these data centers, they don't have a ripple effect. Well, you and I just talked about that. They have turned that on its head.
No doubt about it.
And so it's great to see the opportunities happening in multiple counties all over this state. It's not just in Madison County.
Yeah.
Those manufacturers that are adding jobs, making expansions, we're building power plants in other counties. Those are adding tax base in those areas. It's not a ripple, it is a tidal wave effect.
And all the companies, as we were talking about, involved in the construction, they're able to generate the capital that they then invest in growth of their companies. And we all benefit from that.
And they're buying equipment from local equipment
exactly
companies.
Right.
And so there you go. It's been a huge...
Well, this is what you do it for, and this is we have to be honest. If you look at the GDP growth that the country experienced last year, the president boasts about that. More than half of that was from this industry.
Right. And I know people wonder, why do we have these data centers and stuff? We're using it every day.
Every day.
We carry these devices. People are debating this over social media, which is linked to data centers.
We've pointed it out a million times. Exactly right.
That's right.
That it's because there's value produced from the services that they deliver, and it's not going away. We know that. And I'm proud of Entergy, your company. I'm proud that Mississippi is participating in this phenomenon.
Yep.
Because if we hadn't, we'd have been left behind and maybe not ever get another bite at the apple.
And that's where my nightmares come in, because we did not have this. So it's definitely transformative.
Well, I see nothing but positive, and I want the people to know that Entergy is a great company to have here in Mississippi, that I feel like we did this right. It was a partnership between the regulated utility provider, the government, and the private sector, and it's a big win-win.
And what I'm excited is, because of this growth through Superpower Mississippi, we're about to make major investments to improve reliability, to provide more resilient service at a time when we need it more, and not impact customer rates.
Totally right. Haley Fisackerly, President and CEO of Entergy Mississippi, has been our guest in the Element Wealth studio. Appreciate it, Haley.
Thank you,
Thanks for
Gerard.
coming in.
Appreciate you.
Coming right back with half an hour of middays remaining.
From theseabrook.com.
Days with Gerard.
Good for America. Good for fans of justice and truth. Good for us.
SuperTalk Mississippi.
This is what we stand for.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. The C Spire text line, 601-879-4395. Are you thinking about or planning for retirement? Do you have a plan? Go to myelementwealth.com or call 601-957-6006 to let Element Wealth help you find your balance between income growth and guarantees. The Dow, not happy today. It's down 432 points. And the NASDAQ also in negative territory. Concerns remain about the war, the duration thereof. Also had some rather negative profit reports from some of the more traditional industries coming in. We did have a decent CPI report. Inflation shows that it came in as expected at 2.4%. However, this measurement occurred before the price of gas began to spike. And I don't buy diesel fuel, but friends of mine have said that spiked up about, $1 a barrel or something, is what folks have told me. And that's got people rattled somewhat. And the next CPI report probably won't be quite as rosy. This one just basically said it came in at 2.4%. That is still 0.4% above the Fed's target of 2%, but it came in line with expectations. That's the main point. And that may not continue when we bake in the increased price of fuel. Now, the price of oil, what a roller coaster ride it has been on, that is for sure, since the conflict began in Iran, especially on Monday. It was really crazy. Went all the way up to almost $120 a barrel and ended up settling down versus the Friday closed down in the $85 range. I think it's up today about $4.50, back up to close to $89, $90. I am concerned that it's not going to retreat to its, it's $88 right now. I'm concerned that it's not going to retreat to its pre-Iran war, if you want to call it that. I know everybody's got a different term they use to describe it. I'm calling it a dang war, action, conflict, whatever. I don't know that it'll go real quickly down to that level that it was at before we launched the attacks. Many analysts say, could be a while to get all the supply chain squared away, predicting even 27 before we see price of oil retreat to the pre-attack levels. And that could have political ramifications, honestly. So we don't want the toxic elixir of inflation, which is viewed as more crippling and more harmful to lower-income households, while the wealthy continue to increment their value on their balance sheet, and the Democrats are going to have a field day with that. That's my concern. Hopefully that will not be the case, and we could get this thing behind us. The Secretary of War did report that yesterday and overnight were very intense, maybe the most intense day of the war. And then Secretary of Energy, probably saw this, Rhino, got out ahead of himself a little bit and reported that a Greek tanker was escorted through the strait safely successfully and then had to retract it, pardon me, that didn't really happen. That was a weird deal, for sure.
And there's been conflicting reports on how accurate that was.
Okay.
There's been a report that an escort was requested and then the request was rescinded. There was a report that an escort was requested and it was denied. And there was another report that, like we've talked about earlier, where the vessel turned off its transponder, went through the strait, turned it back on. There's no telling at this point.
Yeah, it was just weird. But he went out to social media, did the Secretary of Energy, Chris Wright, and reported that. But then the White House, apparently, is what's being reported, instructed him to take it down, that's not that wasn't the truth, that's not what happened. I don't know. I just know that it caused some confusion and quite the ruckus for sure when he put that out there. Doesn't seem to be 100% accurate. So, but right now, markets selling off, still concerned about this conflict and don't feel like they have clarity into when it might reach a conclusion. I don't know that the Iranian regime, whatever's left of them, is prepared to surrender unconditionally as the president has demanded.
The leadership might not be, but there's plenty of video evidence of outposts and forward bases in Iran, especially in the west where the Kurdish forces from Iraq have been invading. They're empty. And the guy on the video is saying, yeah, I'm the last one here and I'm getting ready to leave.
Jeez. Well, I think
so they're defecting, or at the very least walking away from their post.
Yeah. I think it's one of those things that the beatings shall continue until there's an attitude adjustment, right? I think that's what we're sort of looking at, and that's causing problems. Here at home, by the way, there's reports that the governor may consider calling a special session to tackle the teacher pay raise issue. That is, if the Senate doesn't pass the bill the House sent down there, and also expanding education freedom, something he believes in. That may have a special session to get that handled. I don't know that that's going to happen. I'm not confident that's going to happen at this point. Yeah, Energy Secretary Chris Wright, just looking at the report, that's what he tweeted, that the U.S. Navy escorted an oil tanker, a Grecian oil tanker, through the Strait of Hormuz. And that did cause oil prices to retreat. But then it vanished a few minutes later, and investors were saying, what the heck?
I mean, you can watch the graph of the oil prices per barrel and look at the timeline of headlines, and it's pretty obvious they're all watching what's happening, and they're taking everything that gets reported.
100%. I'm looking at it.
It fell off a cliff when Trump came out and said the war may be over soon, and then it spiked back up when the reports came out that Iran's got somewhere between 2,000 and 6,000 mines they're trying to put out.
Yep.
Then it dipped back down when the report came out that their mine-laying boats can carry a maximum of 3 at a time. Then it went back up, and then went back down, and it just keeps going.
On the C Spire text line, diesel up $1.50 a gallon. Wow. If we think this won't affect the midterms, we are delusional, says another on the C Spire text line. I think as well, although I will say, Rhino, people have short memories. And if you get some sort of recovery and resumption of the way things were before the attacks with respect to the price of gas and continuing to chip away at inflation and markets start to rise again, real wages are going up, people will forget in a hurry. That doesn't mean the Democrats won't do everything they can to leverage every aspect of this conflict, this war, if you will, on their promotion in the campaign. I think they'll do that.
Well, the loony liberals can't make up their mind which direction they want to go to attack the war, because yesterday or 2 days ago they were complaining that soldiers were having to eat MREs. And then today they're complaining that Hegseth has a budget for surf and turf for soldiers on bases. So it's like, all right, are you complaining that they're being fed MREs and they need better accommodations, while also complaining that when they go back to base they get a good meal every once in a while?
Good point. By the way, I talked earlier about Starbucks founder Howard Schultz. It's not Starbucks, by the way, that's moving to Florida, the headquarters of the company. It's he and his wife, his family. Personally, I think he's about tired of paying the crazy taxes.
The family office that handles their philanthropic endeavors.
There you go. So, which is subject to tax, and a significant amount of it when you're that kind of wealth and you have a family office, which means you got a bunch of wealth managers that manage your money, invest it, and also donate it. That's what the family offices are designed for. Something else I want to pass on that I think is good news is it looks like we're going to have the first ever new refinery in over like 50 years coming to Texas. And, you know, something we discussed numerous times is that our refineries now are configured around refining the dirty, sour, high sulfur content version of oil. But all that oil that we're getting out of the ground from fracking is the light sweet variety that we ship overseas. We're building a new refinery that looks like it's going to be able to handle that grade of oil and produce it and process it right here. Final segment after the break.
Straight balls of fire.
At Key Constructors, our
stories that matter most to Mississippians. Gerard Gibert, Middays with Gerard, SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. Middays, final segment. I will be taking a break tomorrow, speaking to the Madison County Bar Association. Looking forward to that. And then I'm headed up to Pontotoc on Sunday. Was invited to speak to the Republican women coming up this Sunday, 2 to 4, I believe, is the time frame of that event. Looking forward to that as well. Yeah, the president touting this $300 billion Texas refinery, newest one in 50 deadgum years. America First Refining, going to be opening up in Brownsville, Texas. That is awesome. And again, it's because, you know, something we've talked about, Rhino, is that most of the new oil that we're extracting in this country has to be sent abroad for further processing into usable fuel, just because our refineries, for the most part, are engineered around the type of oil that much of which comes from abroad. Now, a lot of it does come from here in this country and Canada. 50% of our imports come from Canada, imported oil, and it's that dirty, heavy crude grade that our refineries are geared to process. But a lot of the new oil that we're harvesting is the light sweet crude variety, and we don't have the facilities to refine it. So this is good news. That's what this particular refinery is going to be designed around: light shale oil, purchased and processed. 1.2 billion barrels. That's a value of $125 billion. That's what this company estimates. 50 billion gallons of refined product. That's incredible. That really is. So good news there. I didn't think we'd ever see it. I really didn't. And that's mainly because you saw the big oil and gas operators say, yeah, we're never building another one. Speaking of which, Exxon just announced, you see that, Rhino? They're going from New Jersey, moving their headquarters to Texas. Are you starting to get the hint, folks, out there? I'm not talking about our audience, but these crazy taxes and regulations you dumb blue states are putting in place are running people out. But you don't seem to care. Don't seem to get it. So that's why I think...
Well, I mean, if you run all the big employers off, then you just target the small employers. You run them off, then everybody has to suck on the government teeth.
That's a good point. They become more reliant on them. Now, someone did ask earlier about new legislation, if I can find it, pertaining to unions. And it is true that there is a bill that authored by Senator Josh Harkins, a Senate bill. I haven't checked the status of it lately. It's SB 2202. It just basically says that for any of these large projects that are receiving benefits from the state, incentives from the state to come here, that they are not able to unionize under private ballot. Fourth state in the country to implement such policy, that any decision about union representation should be made through, that they should be made, I said it backwards, I apologize, must be made through private ballot. Cannot be made through the way the union likes to do it so they can bully you, which is card check. You got to tell us whether or not you're for union, yes or no, right here. No, I'm not 401. What? Then literally, that's the way it works. I'm not kidding. Get in your face, bully you, make your life miserable to the point you don't even want to work there anymore. So what this legislation says is that, no, it's okay. You can unionize if your employees see fit to do so through a vote, but that vote's going to be taken in private and conducted as a private matter. And that's what this bill does. I think it's good legislation. I applaud Senator Harkins for that. Now,
It was sent to the governor yesterday. He's got until the 16th.
Okay. So I'll say that I'm not a fan of, government overreach. I think that's pretty clear, and I don't want government interfering into the business of a business. But in this case, I think if the government says, we're going to give you incentives, okay, these are the terms and conditions for that, I'm okay with that. If it extended to all businesses, I'm not okay with that. But the fact that this is limited to just those businesses that receive certain benefits from the state of Mississippi, I'm okay with that. By the way, that measure narrowly passed in the Senate, 27 to 25. The House took it up. It passed there 78 to 39. That did a little bit better. I've got some interesting data concerning water usage. Didn't get to that today, that a lot of people have a lot of fears about water usage by data centers. Get this, did the calculations, 10 chat GPT queries equal about 250 milliliters of water compared to a flush, which is 6 liters. Stay safe and God bless.
A SuperTalk Mississippi media production.